I'm Lisa Federico, and this is Inside Northwest Columbus. After spending decades in corporate marketing, I traded boardrooms for backyards because the best stories are happening right here at home. Every week, you'll meet entrepreneurs, creatives, and everyday neighbors doing extraordinary things across Worthington and Northwest Columbus. So let's jump into this week's conversation. Welcome to this episode of Inside Northwest Columbus. I'm your host, Lisa Federico, and I am so excited to introduce Sarah Thress to all of you. She is the founder of Thrive and Decide, which is a podcast for women that are going through divorce changes, money changes, things like that. She has 2 books out on Amazon, Guide to Divorce, and the other one is Simplifying Your First Home Purchase. Mm-hmm. She's a realtor that deals specifically with divorce realty. And given that we're focused on investments for the month of April, I'm just so excited to have you on the show. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, it's just such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you got started in this. You started off as a realtor, but you saw this huge need. Take me through your journey of how you put all this together. You have so many resources for women. It's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting path that the universe has taken me on. I've been in real estate for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I was in nonprofit. So, have a very diverse background and always have been focused on what can I do to help people. And so when I got into real estate, I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I absolutely love this. I get to help people. I get to build the relationships, just like I did in development. Only at the end of the day, people are walking away with an asset that is, really good for your financial future. And so I started out focusing on first-time home buyers because I kind of feel like they're like the underdog of the, of
There's
everything.
A lot to learn.
Yes, so much to learn. So I just thought, what can I do to help people understand it better and to feel less overwhelmed? And so that led me to create a course. It's a free masterclass that people can take. It's for first-time homebuyers or anyone that maybe hasn't bought or sold in the last few years. Yeah. And it's, it talks about credit and what goes into credit and all of the things.
So all the tips and tricks for what to do and what not to do when you're buying your first home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that led me to start my first podcast, which was Come to Find Out. It's still out there. A lot of this stuff is evergreen because it does really talk about, the different steps and what are all the different terms, because obviously there's a ton of terms in there. But so as I was doing that, I really was like, I want to do more. What more could I do? And so I really stopped and thought about what is it that people come to me for advice for? And the 2 things that popped up were real estate and divorce. And, I will literally be sitting in an airport and someone will sit down next to me and start just bearing their soul. And it always turns into, like a divorce or, I'm contemplating divorce, things like that. And I was like, okay, universe, like you're sending me this sign too. Okay. And so I thought, what, there's not really anybody that focuses on divorce real estate. And I'd love to do that, because I went through a divorce myself, over a decade ago. And I know how hard it was and how I wished I had somebody that would kind of guide me through it. And so that was kind of the idea behind, niching into divorce real estate and then also creating Thrive and Decide.
Right. What is so different about divorce real estate, especially for anyone who's contemplating, right, a life change like this? What makes divorce realty different?
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, there's a lot of emotions that go into it because you have this emotional attachment to the marital home, especially if you have children. There's always an emotional attachment. And a lot of times people have to go by what their divorce decree says. So, they've already gone through the divorce process and, whenever it comes down to the marital house sale, they have to follow what was agreed upon in the divorce decree. The other thing is just, a lot of times people just assume they have to sell or, that they have to refinance to be able to stay there. And a lot of times that's just not the case. And so, with divorce real estate, what I really like to do is help people know all their options so they can make an informed decision. My job isn't to go in and force you to sell your house just so I can make a commission. My job, the way I see it anyway, is to help guide you and empower you to make a decision that's really going to impact your financial future and help you to be in a better place when you come out on the other side.
What are some of the main challenges, right, that women have going through the divorce and dealing with, right? I mean, you're dealing with everything. You're dealing with all of a sudden having to manage your money, unless you've been doing all the bills, right?
Right.
Or if you haven't worked, you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for income? Tell me a little bit about like some of the things that you see, and then maybe we can talk about for people who are contemplating these life changes, what are some things that you need to put in place right away?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so many things that go into it. And honestly, that's why, I created the Thrive and Decide Guide to Divorce, is because when I was going through my divorce, I didn't even talk to anybody about it. I just, kind of holed up and, did all the things, went through my day, wore my ring, still acted as if everything was normal, and then, would curl up at night and sob uncontrollably for hours. So I want to help women to get from that point, because obviously it's a grief still, but to know all the things to do during it. And a lot of times what you'll see historically, it's, everything I do is not to be a man hater. I mean, I'm remarried. I have no hate towards men. It's really just that a lot of times historically women are not the breadwinners. They are the person that is maybe hasn't worked outside of the home because, they're doing all the things at home, taking care of the kids and doing all of that,
Right.
And if you're not the breadwinner, it can seem very scary and daunting to think, holy crap, I know I'm not happy in this, but I can't afford to leave. So a lot of women stay. And so the thought behind this guide to divorce is to allow women to know, like, hey, there are resources out there. Even on the podcast, I have done some episodes where, I have a divorce attorney that talked about free resources. So women can go get all of their questions answered, all their legal questions and things like that, all answered for free. Which is a great resource to have for people that maybe haven't worked outside of the home. A lot of times women maybe aren't in control of the finances, like you said. Maybe the spouse is the one that's controlling everything. And so they, again, feel trapped because they don't have access to it. And so, in some of my podcast episodes, we talk about different ways that you can find the retainer money for the attorney. It's really just kind of trying to meet people where they're at and helping them to feel seen, heard, and understood and empowered while going through the divorce.
Yeah, because it is such an emotional upheaval.
Yes.
And it's not just even the divorce. It's also where are you going to live? How are you going to manage money, right? What are you going to do for money? But at the same time, when I went through my divorce, I was a breadwinner, so I didn't have that financial barrier, but it was still overwhelming. Even just to manage my own finances, right, was overwhelming. So did you create Thrive and Decide, as well as this Facebook group that you have, as kind of a community to be able to bounce ideas off of and people to ask advice? Is that what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. The podcast is a mixture of women coming on and sharing their stories. And, I always tell my guests, because if anybody's listening and they're like, man, I'd love to share my story, but I don't want my name out there. I always tell my guests, you don't have to share your name. I'll call you whatever you want. I can call you guest. It doesn't matter. The point is that, you're just getting that out there. Women that are listening are like, wow, I'm not the only one that's ever had to go through this.
Right.
And, there's comfort knowing, not that you want other people to suffer like you are, but it's comforting to know you're not the only person. And so the whole idea between, with the podcast was helping women to feel seen, heard, understood, empowered through the process. And then, with the Facebook group, it's really a great way, it's Thrive and Decide Tribe. So to me, I just feel like, creating a tribe of women that can all kind of support each other, bounce ideas off of each other. I've recently started, letting people know that I'm a divorce doula. And so really all that is walking alongside the woman through the quote unquote labor of a divorce. Right. And so, just really like helping guide them through, connecting them to the right resources. And then the on-demand guide does the same thing. So the on-demand guide, they're able to get access. There's a divorce attorney that talks about top tips, what to look for in a divorce attorney. It's not it's a great way for you to know what to look for in a divorce attorney because they're not all the same. And there's all different types of divorces. And maybe you're divorcing someone that you need to have a bulldog, but maybe you just need somebody that is, you guys are amicable. And so you just need someone to just kind of be there to mediate for you. So there's that. And then there's a financial planner, which is a certified divorce financial planner. That is a huge thing because they're able to look at all of your finances and help you to figure out what is going to make the most sense for you in your financial future. So I always recommend whenever women are starting this process, obviously look for your divorce attorney. Look at an estate planning attorney as well, because there's so many different things. In the guide, there's an estate planning attorney that talks about all the things to remember. Like when I was going through my divorce, I didn't think about changing my beneficiaries. I was just lost in grief.
Right.
So you've got to make sure that you're, protecting your assets, no matter how little you feel like your assets are, you need to protect those. Make sure you're protecting yourself with, life insurance and just all the things. So, all of these different pieces and parts in the guide are to help you have a holistic view of what you need to do. And then there's also a mortgage specialist that specializes in divorce. That is a huge one as well because they are able to help you figure out, could you just absorb the home? So in a lot of women or a lot of families right now are locked into those low interest rates that we were able to get in 2020, which was freaking amazing. And we're likely never going to see that again.
Right.
Sadly. But because of that, a lot of people feel stuck in the home or they're like, I can't refinance because interest rates are so much. It would like more than double my payment. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that every loan can actually be assumed, even if it's a conventional loan. So whatever's left at that interest rate can be assumed by that person. Now it's up to you and your financial planner and your mortgage specialist to figure out if you financially could do that. But there are different ways that you can make it work.
Hey, quick break. May is our women's issue, and it's one of the most meaningful months of the year for us. We are featuring women in our community who are doing incredible things, leading businesses, raising families, building networks, and creating impact in ways that matter. On the podcast, we go beyond the surface to talk about the real journeys behind that success, the decisions, the challenges, the support systems that make it all possible. If those are the kinds of stories that resonate with you, make sure you're subscribed. You can dive into the full women's issue through the link in the show notes below. I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because it seems like if you're contemplating this kind of a life change, right, you need to have the backing behind you. And I think a lot of people maybe just go into this thinking that, without that support group behind you. Let's talk first about selecting like the right kind of attorney. What are some things that you guide people in with the book? Because that one is a big one. It's tough to find the right attorney. Just because they say they do this doesn't mean they're right for you. So how do you help women through that? And what are some things that you've talked about in the book that the audience could take back?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I help them to kind of, figure out what kind of a divorce do you think this is going to be? Are you divorcing a narcissist? If you're divorcing a narcissist, then you're likely going to need more of a bulldog. So this would be the type of attorney you'd want. And so, then I can connect them to an attorney that, I feel would be the best fit for them. I still always say, please make sure that you're, checking, interview them, do your due diligence. And if they're not the right fit, that's okay. Like we'll find you someone else. Right. But sometimes, there are different types of divorces as well. There's dissolution. And so a lot of times what that'll look like is like a collaborative divorce. And there are actually attorneys out there that are considered collaborative divorce attorneys. And they go through training and they specialize in collaborative divorce. And so that really is a less expensive way because you're not having to, hire all the attorneys and spend all the money and go to court, for months and, or years.
Right.
And
Much
dragging
different
it out.
scale.
Yes. So it kind of depends, like what they're looking for, if there are children, if it's a narcissist, how they feel the divorce may go. So those are really like individual things that, they'll have to figure out. But a lot of what's talked about, in the guide is finding that person, because just like in real estate, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. There's plenty of us out there. There's plenty of attorneys out there. And so not every one is going to be the right one for you. So
you really recommend looking at what kind of divorce do you think this is going to be?
Correct.
Because if it's going to get messy, you want somebody who knows how to deal with the mess.
Yes.
And if it's easy, do you ever have people who do their own dissolutions?
Yeah, we do. Actually, we did ours. So because we agreed on everything, we just, it was very amicable. Everything was agreed upon. And we were like, well, then why do we really need to, pay for it? So there are resources at the courthouse. There is an office there that you can go to, and they actually provide legal advice for you. And it's on a sliding scale. Most of it is free. And they will just help guide you through it. So then they make sure that you have the correct forms and they make sure that you filled them out correctly. There's still a lot of, I don't always recommend that people do that because even when you're starting out and everything is amicable, something can always go south.
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. We got very lucky that we did have all our I's dotted and T's crossed, and, but my biggest fear, even when we were going through it, was, holy crap, like, I hope that, I hope we did this right and we're actually divorced. Because, it could be really scary if you find out later on it didn't actually go. But we stood in front of the judge and, we have all the documentation and all of that. But, and like I said, I was very lucky, like you, I was the breadwinner. So I was able to financially afford, to keep our house and things like that. But I've walked alongside many women that was not the case.
Right.
And so I've helped them to figure out, like, if there's no financial way for them to stay in the home, then what's the next best thing, and let's find you something else that you can make your own and still, be in the right school district or, whatever for your children.
Right. So there are so many decisions to be made.
Yes.
It's horrifically overwhelming. And I love that you provide resources and local resources for our community that women can utilize. I want to talk a little bit about the other pillar that you mentioned, and that is all the financial planning. Mm-hmm. Because to me, before contemplating this kind of a life change, you really want to think through, like, what's your financial situation? And so many women, like even for me, even though I was making money, I never really managed it very well, right? I left that to my partner at the time. And it was kind of overwhelming. I didn't have a discipline for like budgeting and saving because I didn't need to. We were dual income earners.
Yeah.
And so what are some things you recommend to women who are contemplating, like, okay, this is maybe like my next decision here.
Yeah.
What are some things that they should be doing and maybe more importantly should not be doing to get themselves off on the right foot?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is don't make a decision really quickly. Like, don't just go, oh my gosh, like I'm leaving, I'm selling the house, I'm doing this, like don't make hasty decisions. Get all the information and all the facts so that you can make an empowered decision. So talk to a certified divorce financial planner. Even talk to a financial coach. Like I have some financial coaches that they're not necessarily going to help you with your what you're going to invest in, but they're going to do everything from showing you how to balance your checkbook, to how to budget,
Right.
like all the things that some of us just kind of take for granted because we've just been doing it all along.
Right.
And so it's nice to know that you could have a coach that could really walk alongside with you and help you to figure out that. And sometimes that's all you need is you just need to feel empowered in the decision making, in the financial decision making. And so then you're able to, have that conversation with your spouse. And maybe that was it. But maybe what you needed was that knowledge to go, okay, I got this. I don't need him. And so then, talking with a divorce financial planner, they're able to look at the big picture of everything and go, okay, so here's, you haven't worked outside of the home, so you don't have, any investments, but your spouse does. Okay, so, here in Ohio, not every state is like this, but here in Ohio, it's a dower state. So you're going to get half of everything.
Yep.
Now, I think the other big mistake, and this also was on a podcast episode recently, a lot of times people just assume, well, I'm going to get half of everything. Like, so that's just it. And it's like, well, you have to figure out how to make it equitable. And so it may not be, here's your $5 and here's your $5, like it's
Right.
like, okay, well, you get the house, but you get this, or, whatever. I think the other big thing is sometimes they're like, well, I'll just buy them out. Like, maybe they do have a 401k from, they worked outside of the home previously. And they say, well, I'll just cash out my 401k, buy him out of the house, and I'll just stay here. Well, that may not be the best financial
Right.
decision for you, because what if you're not getting half of his retirement or whatever? So now you have nothing in retirement. Cool, you have this house. But is
was
it
that
worth
the best
it?
decision?
Yeah, was that the best financial decision? And, at the end of the day, it's your decision. So, I can give you all the guidance in the world, and you may still say, I don't care. And that's okay. That's fine. My job is not to force anyone to make any decision just because I think that's in their best interest. My job is just to, walk alongside them, connect them to the resources, and be a sounding board to help them make the best decision for them.
Yeah. And I have to think too that if you decide to move forward with a divorce, an uncoupling, there are phases financially that you have to go through that maybe a lot of women don't know about. Like, for example, you can't just take money out of the account to go shopping to make you feel better.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's all kinds of, you don't want to go out and buy a car right before you're going to buy a house. So having a divorce-focused financial planner can really help you through those phases. That's what it sounds like to me.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that because, a lot of times, even whenever they've come to that decision that they want the divorce, one or both sides have decided that, if someone doesn't file for divorce, that does leave the other person an open door that they could just spend all your money down. I unfortunately had a situation where I was, coaching someone through, just kind of walking alongside them in their divorce journey. And because they didn't want to say, they didn't even want to say the D word, divorce.
Right.
They didn't even want to say it. And they didn't file. And because their spouse didn't file, they actually had free reign to spend down all of their savings, all of their investments, pull out all their 401k.
Oh, so had they filed, then there would have been very specific
Yep.
guidelines for what you could spend. But
Yes.
because they didn't, I didn't. That's a good one.
Yeah. So you definitely want to make sure that you're filing as soon, even if, like, just because you file, if you guys work it out and everything's great, cool. Like, you can unfile.
But
it's
it
not a big
protects you
deal.
by
But this
filing.
protects you, because if you don't, that person can spin down everything and there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas if you file and the other person, whether it's either spouse decides, hey, I'm just going to go out and spend a bunch of money. I'm going to stick it to them. Well, because they filed, they now can come back to you. And what you were going to get is now reduced by the amount that you spent frivolously. So there's a lot of things to, just make sure that you're staying on the up and up, but definitely, filing is going to protect the assets for all parties involved.
Tell me some impactful stories. I'm dying to hear the stories that of people that you've dealt with, right? Who maybe were in terrible situations. I'm just dying to know, like, take me through some that like were just doozies.
Oh, man. I had one, I actually ended up getting subpoenaed in court to testify because there was a contempt case. So the divorce was already final. And, in the divorce decree, it said that the spousal support would start as soon as the house was sold and that everything, would be split 50-50 on the home, like whatever proceeds came from the home. So I'm thinking, okay, this is great. Like, all parties are going to be really motivated. Well, only one party was super motivated. That was the gentleman who was no longer living in the home. And so he was like, okay, like, this needs to be, listed and all of that. And so the wife was still living at home. Living at the home, and she had one child that was still living at home with her. And so she wanted to stay in the school district. Absolutely. Totally understand. But she had some certain things that she was like, we have to have this, this, and this in the offer. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. She wanted to have extra time in the home. She wanted to have, like a quick close so that she would have money so that she could then, purchase her next house and get situated. And she wanted to be in the same school district. Anyway, so as we start this process, everything seems great. I always go in and I'm like, look, I'm on nobody's side. I'm literally just a neutral here trying to help you guys. I understand what goes into this. I understand the emotion around it, all of that. And so we started showing the house. We got offers much higher than I even thought we would get. And it checked every single box and, and then some. And so I sent it to them for signatures and she refused to sign it. And I couldn't understand why. I was like, do you understand that like you are getting everything you asked me to give you in this offer? And you even get to stay in the house for 60 days after closing free. So you have plenty of time. You've already gotten your proceeds. You have plenty of time to find something. And she just like didn't want to sign it. And I think that for her, it was more of an emotional attachment to the home. And so I tried to help her to understand like, hey, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot because once this is sold, then your spousal support starts. You will have money. Then you've got, like there was all these things that would have set her up if she would have just.
And when you're in the thick of it and the emotional part takes over, you don't think about those
You don't.
things. Yeah.
You don't. And I tried, but at the end of the day, again, I can't force anybody to see things as any certain way. Right. So all I can do is provide information and facts and guidance as best I can.
Because she wouldn't sign, then now she had to go to court.
Well, because she didn't sign, yes. The spouse, the husband, of course, had every right to file a contempt charge against her. And so we ended up having to take the house off the market for a little while and figure
incur
things
the costs
out.
of court.
Correct. So then we end up, going back on the market, getting an offer. It's significantly less than what it would have been. So, after that was done, then it was, contempt charges were brought against her. We went to court. I was subpoenaed. And I was like, look, this is all the emails. These are how many times I reached out to her with no response from her, like, all of that. And so in the end, he ended up getting out of the proceeds of the home, got the difference between what they would have made if she would have signed. And it was about a $25,000 difference that he ended up making more money on the proceeds than she did. And it was just an emotional thing. So if she would have just gone, okay, I'm taking the emotion out, because that's what you have to do in divorce. Nothing about it is fair. There's that's literally what I tell people whenever I start talking to them. I'm like, look, nothing about divorce is fair. You can't split your kids in half. You
Right.
can't, you can't split a house in half. You can't, there's nothing is fair. So what you have to do is look at it from the big picture. If there's children involved, look at what's best for my child.
Right.
And then what's best for me. And then, and then kind of go from there. But that's where having all of these, financial planners and divorce attorneys and estate planning attorneys and mortgage specialists and, real estate specialists, that's where having all of those on your team can help you to really make the right decision.
Yeah. Didn't get the magazine at home? No problem. You can read it for free by signing up for our digital issues. Just head to the link in the show notes. And hey, if you're just listening to this episode, did you know that you can watch it too? Catch the full video on YouTube using the link below. How do you work with clients to help them get past the emotional part? Like, do you connect them with other resources? Because I got to think that sometimes we hold ourselves back because we can't get past the anger or the sadness or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, that's such a great question. Yes, I always encourage people to go to therapy and to, find a trusted person that they can talk to. So, there's all kinds of therapists out there. So, I always encourage them to find the one that's a right fit for them.
Yeah.
And I always share that, that's what got me up off of my bathroom floor was, a therapist. I saw her for well over a decade. But it took a year of her telling me the exact same thing over and over before it finally kicked in and I finally was able to radically accept, oh, okay, like this is over. All right. And now what? Ooh, now I get to figure out who I am and what I want to do. And I have a whole clean slate and,
Right.
So
the other side of
the other
what
side
happens after the uncoupling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what I try and help people to see. I'm like, I understand right now. It's real hard for you to understand that like, it's going to get better, but it really will. Yeah. And so it's really just connecting them to different mental health resources, especially a really good, a really good therapist, excuse me. And if anyone's dealing with a narcissist uncoupling, that is a huge, it really just gaslights you and messes with your brain.
Yeah.
And so I have an amazing narcissistic coach who literally helps ungaslight you. And so I can connect you, to those types of resources. I didn't personally need her because my ex was not a narcissist. So, but I love having her in my back pocket because unfortunately what I'm seeing is there are a lot of narcissists out there.
Well, you see it all over social media.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked by it as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really interesting that we now have coaches that are available to help people through it. Because if you haven't been through it, it's a real eye-opener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have an uncoupling that is I'll call it a volunteer basis, right?
Right.
Sometimes, my mom was just telling me about a friend who she had wanted to sell the house years ago. The husband didn't want to. So he underwent a huge renovation. Mm. And just recently, the renovation is ongoing, but he passed away in the backyard at a barbecue. So now she's never dealt with the finances. Now she's got this house that's all under construction. How is she going to sell it? She didn't know about things like the bank accounts and what vehicles he owned. I mean, it's a whole thing. So you have resources to be able to help women who suddenly find themselves in a situation where they are, for lack of a better way to put it, totally alone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, and honestly, when I started Thrive and Decide, I was going to focus on divorce and, women that have lost a spouse. But I felt like that was there are a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. Yeah. Obviously both are, full of grief, but it's grief in a different way. But a lot of the same resources will help women that are going through, the loss of a spouse. And so, I would highly recommend talking to, an estate planning attorney. I have an amazing one that, I'd be happy to pass along to your mom's friend if you want that. But an estate planning attorney is really going to help you look at everything. And then also your certified divorce financial planner can help you look into everything as well. And, you may even have to get a forensic accountant involved. And that person is able to really dig into all the different, bank accounts or vehicles or homes or, any of the things. They can help uncover all of that for you.
And I love that you help women be able to build this community of experts that they need around them to be able to help them make the right decision for themselves, especially at a time where it's just so emotional. That's where I think we get ourselves into trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is, and like I said, it took me a year to radically accept that, and that was something that my therapist just continued to, talk about was like, Sarah, you just have to radically accept it. And so I try and help people to understand that. And really radical acceptance is just, understanding, hey, like with my divorce, he just decided he didn't love me anymore. And so for me, I was like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, I was trying to go internal and figure out what I did. And, when it came down to it, it was like, it wasn't me.
Right.
It wasn't him. It just is. And that's okay. And now he's happy and I'm happy and everything's great. So, so you just have to get to that point where you can radically accept it. The other thing I always let people know is it's going to be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You're going to have some days where you feel so good and you're so high. And then you've got some other days where you are so low, you can't get yourself off of the bathroom floor. So those are the days I always say, lean in, throw the biggest pity party you possibly can, because the next day you're going to be able to pull up your big girl panties and move on.
Right. I love that you also have a variety of resources specifically targeted for where women are in the process. For example, the book, Guide to Divorce. That's something to read as you're thinking through this, right? But then you also have a course. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the course really, I've gone through a few different phases with it where I tried to do it, in person. And then I really had to kind of go back to put myself back in that place and go, you know what? I wouldn't have shown up to that. Like, even though I know I needed it, I wouldn't have shown up, because what if I saw someone and they saw that I was going through this, even though we're both there for the same thing, it's really difficult. So it now is an on-demand course. And so you're able to get basically 5 consults for one low price. And so you're able to there's a divorce attorney that comes on and talks about what to look for in a divorce attorney, the different types of divorces. So your collaborative divorce, your amicable divorce, your, we're going to duke it out to the very end divorce. So there's different types of things. And so then it just kind of gives you a guide to, while you're out looking for a divorce attorney, what to look for. Maybe you like the person that's talking, on the course and you want to work with them. There's always a way to get connected to them. But maybe you want to keep shopping around. That's fine. The next course after that is the estate planning attorney. And so she's really talking about the different assets that you really need to focus on, like what to look for in an estate planning attorney, because there is a niche, for that. And so, she's got that. And then, of course, links that you can, talk to her directly if you want to. And then there's a certified divorce financial planner is the third part of the course. And again, they're talking about all the things that go into it, how they can help walk alongside you, how they can help work, what you need to look for in a divorce financial planner. Obviously find a certified divorce financial planner whenever you're looking at this. And then the last part of the course is a mortgage specialist that specializes in divorce, and then myself. And so we're really just talking about what to think about when you're trying to decide whether you want to keep the home, sell the home, what kind of goes into it. And so that's where I, walk them through, like, I literally will come to your house, give you, my assessment, it's a free home evaluation. There's no pressure. And then that way, again, you can know, maybe you're still working with your financial planner to figure out, does it make sense for me to keep the home or sell the home? Once they know what their proceeds are, that also helps them to decide, okay, actually, yeah, I think we could make this work, or nope, we need to sell it. And then, I don't have to touch any of my retirement, because maybe you have worked outside of the home, but you weren't the breadwinner, and that's okay. But you want to still protect your assets because at the end of the day, you still want to be able to retire someday, and
Right.
you don't want to set yourself back so far.
Yeah.
So.
So we will put all of these resources in the show notes. So the course, where to get the books, if they want to be the podcast,
Yep.
As well as the Facebook group that you have as well. But do you have a website? Where can people go to get more information about you specifically?
Yeah. So honestly, the best way to reach me would be you can go on any of my social medias. So it's Sarah Thress Realtor, or just I have a Thrive and Decide page. And so you're going to see that on Facebook, Instagram. Like you can go to any of those, LinkedIn, for resources. So I don't have just a full website, a website for real estate. I do have, it's just Sarah Tress at redfrogrealty.com. And I can have all of that for you.
Great. And your podcast is on all the major podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on. I love that you're helping women build a community of resources behind them to help them through what is a tremendously challenging time. And I just thank you for what you do. I love the niche. I think it's so important. And that is going to conclude this episode of Inside Northwest Columbus. Thanks so much for being with me, and I will see you next week on the show. Take care.
Boxland Media. Think big.